APIs will become more and more important and very useful for us Wi-Fi engineers, but they can be intimidating if you've never used them. So in this series of episodes, I'm introducing how the Mist API work by creating very simple Python scripts. So we will go over the Mist API documentation, explain the code, and then we will run this script together so we can study the results. If you like this content, please give the video a like and consider subscribing if you don't want to miss out on any upcoming video. Thank you very much, and let's get started. So in this video, I will show you how you can delete a WLAN profile using a simple Python script. Okay. So in the previous episode, we've actually, see how we could validate that the WLAN profile already exists, right? In the one before that, we created a WLAN profile using a simple Python script. And here we're just gonna, show how we can delete one. Okay. So if I go back here, last time we used this SemFio Lab WLAN profile. If I go back to my dashboard, Mist dashboard, you can see that we have plenty of WLAN profiles to delete here, right? Including that SemFio Lab that we can play around with. Okay, so let's get into the code and look at how we can make it happen. In this episode, we will actually make two API calls, right? So in order to delete one site, you need to make two API calls. The first one will be to retrieve the list of all the WLAN that you have part of one site, right? And once you have that list, then you can retrieve the ID of the WLAN profile that you want to delete, and then send the second call using that ID to delete that site. Okay, so let's see how we can do this. I go back to my code here. As usual, I have my main function here that just parses my arguments. As an argument, I will pass my config.json file. By now, you guys know the drill. And then I will load those information, in the configs dictionary. And that's a Python dictionary that I can use to retrieve all the information I have in my config file right here, my JSON config file. And then here I will call the delete_WLAN function, passing my configs dictionary as an argument to that function. Okay, so let's take a look at the delete WLAN function. And here, as you can see in the comments that I put right at the beginning of the function here, we will make two API calls. The first one will be a get to retrieve all the WLAN profiles part of a specific site. And this is the exact same one that we've used in the previous episode when we talked about how to validate that a site that a WLAN profile already exists within a site, exact same one. And then we'll make a second call using delete to delete a specific WLAN based on the WLAN ID, right? As you can see, the URL is very similar. We're just going to append at the very end the ID of the WLAN we want to delete. Okay, so once again, the idea is to go and retrieve the list of all the WLAN profile, find the one we want to delete, and then use the key of the one we want to delete, the ID, to send the second API call that will actually go ahead and delete that WLAN profile on the Mist cloud. Okay, so first we need to take care of the first API call, exact same code as the one we've seen in the previous episode. So we build our URL. So the URL, you have it right here. So the first section is the HTTPS api.mist.com/api/v1, and we have that in our config files under API Mist URL, right? So you have it here, API Mist URL, so we can retrieve that data. Then we need to append sites, so that's why you have site here, / and then we need to append the site ID. So once again, we can go back to our config file and go and retrieve the site ID, which is what you have right here, site ID. It will retrieve that string. And then we need to append /WLAN, and that's WLANs, sorry, with the S. And that's what you have here, /WLANs. Okay. Then the headers is the same for all the calls we're making so far to the Mist API cloud. So this is just the exact same thing as before. I'm just retrieving the token from my configuration right here. And then we can send the get request using the request module and the get function. And as an argument, we're going to pass the API URL and the headers that we've just defined right above it. Okay. Then the API cloud will send us all the answer, and we'll put this into a response variable that we can use to analyze what the Mist cloud is sending us back. Okay. First thing we do is we check the status of the call. If it's 200, it means everything went well, right? So once again, Mist is a RESTful API, uses RESTful API, sorry. So you can actually, it's based on HTTP and HTTPS, so it will use the same code. So 200 means, in terms of HTTP code, 200 means everything went well. So here, if everything went well, meaning the code is equal to 200, then we can load the content of the response. As you can see here, the response content, we can load that into a WLAN, so a Python dictionary that we call WLANs here, right? And since the response content is given to us into a JSON format, we need to use a JSON.loads function to load this JSON content into a Python dictionary, okay? And here I guess I can show you later on, if I uncomment this, we can actually print the WLAN variable and we can see the content of that response. And then we're going to loop on all the different WLAN profiles we have within our site until we find the one that has the same SSID as the one we have defined in our configurations. Okay, so unless we find an SSID profile that has the same name as the one we specified here, so in our case, SimFireLab. If you found it, then you can make the second API call to delete it. If you don't find it, then you'll get a message at the end that will tell you, the site was not deleted because we actually couldn't find it. It wasn't part of that specific site. Okay. If we find it here, we're going to make our second API call right here. So what we have to change is we have to change the URL. And the URL we need to use to delete a site is this one right here. It's actually the exact same thing, except that at the end we need to append / and the ID of the WLAN we want to delete. Okay. So as you can see here, I'm building my URL, and at the end I'm adding / and I'm adding the ID of the WLAN. Okay. And since here we're looping through all of our WLAN, if I'm retrieving that WLAN ID, I'll be getting the ID directly from the response I got from the first API call. So I know for sure that I'm using an ID that already exists on the Mist cloud because that data Mist has just sent me. Okay. And so once I build my URL, the headers is the same. You notice here I don't define the headers because it's the exact same thing. So I don't need to redefine it again. I have it right here. I can just reuse the variable. Okay. And I can just send my delete request. So now we're using the request module, but now we're using the delete function. Remember earlier we used the get function because we wanted to send a get API call. This time around we're sending a delete API call. So we need to use the delete function part of the request module. And then as an argument, we'll pass this new API URL del, and then we'll pass along the headers, the same headers. Okay. And we'll put the response into response_del. Then we analyze if everything went well, if the status code is equal to 200. If everything went well, then we can print a message saying that that specific WLAN was deleted, and we can return true, right? So when we launch if I go back to my main function here, when I call my function delete_WLAN and I receive true, it means the WLAN got deleted. If I receive false, as you can see here at the bottom, if we end up all the way at the bottom of the function and the WLAN was not found, was not deleted, then I will return false, and I can handle the data differently in the rest of my code. Okay, so that's pretty much about it. Here you can see that when I delete it, I'm going to print a nice little message. And here I'm going to show the SSID. So I'm going to show the name of the WLAN profile I have deleted. And I'm also going to show the ID. So we will know exactly which WLAN profiles got deleted. Okay. Something to note here is on the Mist side of things, you could have two different WLAN profiles with the same name, right? But they'll have a unique ID, so you can actually separate the two. So here, if you do it this way, and I guess that's a limitation of my script. This script is just very simple. It's just the goal is to show you that you can do it this way, and we're deleting based on the name. So if you have different SSID profiles with the same name and you run the script, you will pretty much remove the first one in the list. And if you keep running the script, you will just remove them one at a time. Okay. If you want to do this specific task of deleting a WLAN profile in a more clean way, you would use the ID, right? Instead of using the name, you would use the ID. Okay. So enough talk about the code. I think it's pretty, it's pretty nice here. That's actually the first time we have 2 API calls with one of our scripts. Totally doable, you see. We just have to define our URLs differently, but it's totally doable, and we should be able to make 2 calls within one function without any issue. Okay? So let's jump into launching the script and see if we can actually delete some sites. So here in my config file, you can see that I'm trying to delete the SemFio lab site. And if I go to my dashboard, I can actually see that the SemFio lab exists. Okay? Here, something cool, if I go back to my scripts, I can actually use one of the scripts we've worked on in one of these episodes to list all of the WLAN profiles I have available to me. Remember, if we go back to the list WLANs, we can use this script. So I can do, actually, I'll go to the directory, and here I can run the list WLAN profiles, config.json. And here it's going to show me all the WLAN profiles I have available. So I can see I have the lab. Oh, sorry, I copy pasted. Let me rerun it again. Let me rerun it again. Python list WLAN profile config.json. So here you can see, we have the SemFio lab available. And so here, if I go back to the script we are working on, which is delete WLAN, right? And I run it. So Python delete WLAN profile, and I put the config file on here. I get a nice message telling me that the SemFio lab was deleted. So we used to have it here, and now it's deleted. Okay? So everything worked. Let's try to run it again, because I know now it doesn't exist anymore. So let's try to run it again and see what happens. So here, the script is telling us that the SemFio lab was not deleted because obviously it doesn't exist anymore. And if I go back to the previous script and I try to run the previous script again of listing the WLAN profiles I have available to me, then we can see that, boom, the SemFio lab doesn't exist anymore. Okay? What if we want to delete SemFio lab 1? Let's try that out. Let me go back to the directory of deleting, and then what I'll do here in my config is I will just rename this guy, and then rename it to SemFio lab 1, and then I can rerun the script here, Python delete config, and then boom, before you know it, SemFio lab 1 is gone. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this one. I think it was interesting to see that we're starting to build out on our skills. We're starting to make multiple API calls with our scripts. And it's nice to be able to create, delete, list, validate, if a specific SSID profile exists or not. And hopefully you can build on top of that. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you're not subscribed yet to the channel, please consider subscribing. I will be posting more videos regarding Mist APIs in the future. And thank you very much for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.